Federalist 20, Part 4. Just remember that this Federalist, Madison and Hamilton are talking about the weakness of the Confederacy in the United Netherlands. The screen might be dark, but the sound will be there. Notwithstanding the calamities produced by the stadtholdership, it has been supposed that without his influence in the individual provinces, the causes of anarchy manifest in the Confederacy. I'm sorry, let me read that again. The causes of anarchy manifest in the Confederacy would long ago have dissolved it. Under such a government, says Abbe Mobley, remember he is the historian that we've seen Madison and Hamilton quote before, the Union could never have subsisted if the provinces had not a spring within themselves capable of quickening their tardiness and compelling them to the same way of thinking. This spring is the stadtholder. It is remarked by Sir William Temple that in the intermissions of the stadtholdership, Holland, by her riches and her authority, which drew the others into a sort of dependence, supplied the place. So remember, he talks about tardiness. He's kind of bringing this up because he wants to remind his readers that we've had the same problems. Remember when we would ask the states, we would make requisitions, the states would not respond on time, they would be tardy. So he's saying, look, we're dealing with the same thing that United Netherlands has. So we have to be aware of this. This is going to create a lot of problems. These are not the only circumstances which have controlled the tendency to anarchy and dissolution. The surrounding powers impose an absolute necessity of union to a certain degree, at the same time that they nourish by their intrigues the constitutional vices which keep the Republic in some degrees always at their mercy. He is referring to the issues that United Netherlands had because it was small confederacy compared to the huge power, relatively huge power, France and Prussia. He's talking about these weaknesses that are seen in this confederacy sometimes cannot challenge or defend themselves against these two big powers that are surrounding them. And again, he's reminding Americans that we're going to have the same problems. If we do not unite, British monarchy, Spanish monarchy, French monarchy, they don't like to see a republic established. They don't want to see us strong. They'd rather see us weak. So they will take advantage and keep us weak and distrusting of each other. The true patriots have long bewailed the fatal tendency of these vices and have made no less than 4 regular experiments by extraordinary assemblies. See, extraordinary doesn't mean the same thing it does today. Extraordinary means almost like emergency assemblies, convened for the special purpose to apply a remedy. As many times has their laudable zeal found it impossible to unite the public councils in reforming the known they acknowledged the fatal evils of the existing Constitution. Let us pause, my fellow citizens, for one moment over this melancholy and monetary lesson of history, and with the tear that drops from the calamities brought on mankind by their adverse opinions and selfish passions, let our gratitude mingle an ejaculation to heaven for the propitious concord which has distinguished the consultations of our political happiness. He says, we have history lessons, the best teacher in front of us. Let us learn, let us Americans learn and be thankful for the chance we have to teach the world that we can establish a republic, that we can govern ourselves. So here, just like in Federalist number 14, he's reminding his countrymen that they have a chance to do something great and teach the world a lesson. A design was also conceived of establishing a general tax to be administered by the feudal authority. This also had its adversaries and failed. This unhappy people seem to be now suffering from popular convulsions, from descending among the states, and from the actual invasion of foreign arms. The crisis of their destiny. All nations have their eyes fixed on the awful spectacle. The first wish prompted by humanity is that this severe trial may issue in such a revolution of their government and will establish their union and render it parent of tranquility, freedom, and happiness. The next, that the asylum under which we trust, the enjoyment of these blessings will speedily be secured in this country, may receive and console them for the catastrophe of their own. So here he says we can learn by looking at the history of United Netherlands. In Netherlands, they had a situation just almost like in America with the Shays' Rebellion, where in Western Massachusetts, a group of farmers rose up, they had a rebellion, and there was also a rebellion in United Netherlands. So he says, if we do not unite, just like we see the United Netherlands, they for a while had chaos and rebellions in 1786, 1787, and we had ours. If we do not unite, this might not end up to be a happy story. So keep that in mind. I make no apology for having dwelt so long on the contemplation of these federal precedents. So he says, I'm not making any apology, I'm not apologizing, or I don't have to defend the fact that I've spent so much time talking about all these. He uses the word federal, but he's meaning confederacy, confederal, precedents, all these confederacies that have been before us. Experience is the oracle of truth. See, he says it beautifully again. Experience is the oracle of truth. And where its responses are unequivocal, they ought to be conclusive and sacred. The important truth which it unequivocally pronounces in the present case is that a sovereignty over sovereign, a government over governments, a legislation for communities, as country distinguished from individuals, as it is a solecism in theory, so in practice it is subversive of the order and ends of civil polity. by substituting violence in place of law, or the destructive coercion of the sword in place of the mild and salutary coercion of the magistracy. So here, remember, he says, a legislation for communities as contradistinguished from individuals. Remember, we talked about this. He says, a government should be able to legislate and make citizens of different states comply with the law. It doesn't have to go to the states and beg the state to do that for them. So he says, when we accept this new constitution, we will allow the federal government to make laws applicable to every citizen. And with that will come happiness and prosperity, because if we don't have a situation where the federal laws are not applicable to citizens, then pretty soon, sooner or later, we will have to resort to sword and war rather than, he says, the magistracy of law. Instead of going to the courts and working things out peacefully, we'll have to revert to war, violence, destruction, and at the end of the day, unhappiness for ourselves, for future generations, no prosperity for ourselves and future generations. So now look back again at these two memoranda, Madison's notes. When you get comfortable with reading texts, when you feel like your English has improved, I would say definitely take a look at these, and you will see a lot of the ideas that are in the Federalist Papers and eventually in the Constitution are referred to in these two documents. And these documents became available or were prepared by Madison because he had access to books on history, he had reflected on his experience, and that's what we need to do if we want to keep humanity happy, prosperous.